Members, you are now live.
Welcome to the Estimates Committee of Wednesday, February 24th, 4:30 p.m. Council Chambers virtual. Mr. Deputy Clerk, please give the roll call.
Through the chair, roll call has been taken.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, just a reminder that the following rules of procedure apply to this meeting as they have all Estimates Committee meetings. All motions must be moved and seconded. Each speaking opportunity for members is 3 minutes. Of course, there's no time limit on the number of times you may speak on a particular item. Members of the committee, are there any pecuniary declarations of interest in tonight's meeting? I see none. Okay, we're at the starting point of budget 4.1. Joel Daniels, could you please provide an overview of the previous nights?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The starting point for this evening is a 2021 operating budget of $167,862,565, which is a budget impact after assessment growth of 2.62% and an average residential tax impact of 3.2% or $104.83. That also results in an average multi-residential tax impact of 2.92%, an average commercial tax impact of 1.01%, and an average industrial tax impact of 2.01%.
Thank you, Joel. And to the clerk, we still don't have any registered delegations for this evening's meeting?
Through the chair, we did not receive any delegations for tonight's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Joel Daniels, please provide an overview of steps 4A and 4B, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we're going to start tonight with the corporate financing 2021 operating budget, and information on the corporate financing budget can be found beginning on page 160 of your preliminary 2021 operating budget document. This document is also available online using the hyperlink at this stage of the worksheet if you do need to access it. The corporate financing 2021 operating budget as presented totals $15,894,917. It's summarized in the chart at step 4B with an overall budget decrease of 5.2%. I won't go through this chart in detail as I will be doing a presentation momentarily that we will go through these items in more detail.
Thank you, Joel. And would you please proceed with your presentation with respect to 21 corporate budget?
I'll just wait for that to come on the screen. Great, thanks. Next slide, please. So just by way of a brief overview of the corporate financing budget, it does provide for a number of financial matters that are not directly attributable to specific departmental operations, and in many cases are non-discretionary or contractual obligations. It also provides support to the capital budget by way of transfers to capital funding envelope reserves, as well as debt servicing costs. Next slide. There are a number of pressures and opportunities being seen in this budget this year. With respect to pressures, firstly, capital transfers are needed to support the city's infrastructure funding gap. However, in accordance with the budget guidelines for 2021, this budget does not include an additional capital levy this year. Secondly, we're seeing reduced PIL revenue, so payment in lieu of tax revenue, resulting from MPAC's reduction to the assessed value of the casino. So the roll was returned with a reduced assessed value, which previously was $93 million. That's been reduced to $75 million. The city is seeing increasing municipal insurance costs, and we're also seeing reduced casino revenues. Of course, with the reduced capacity limits and closure of the casino, we are seeing reduced revenues there. And while council has approved a strategy to eliminate the impact of these lost revenues in 2021, a prolonged pandemic could certainly see additional pressures here into 2022. And of course, we're seeing pressures related to COVID-19. It's not all bad news. There are some opportunities in this budget, namely the annual phase out of the amounts owing to the county and property owners with respect to the annex properties. That is providing a reduction to this budget, as well as the WSIB near surcharges. They have ended effective in 2020, and we do have a reserve with a sufficient balance, we believe, to ease the transition to the WSIB's new rate framework. Next slide, please. So I do just want to touch a bit on COVID-19 and how these impacts are reflected in this budget. Next slide, please. So all city departments have identified many COVID-related financial pressures and savings in this budget. And it's very important to note that all the costs and savings that have been identified are in the corporate finance budget. Then that's leaving the departmental budgets with a 2021 budget that reflects normal service levels. And this will be important as we move forward to the next year's budget, as this will allow for better base budget comparisons to exist as we move into 2022. There are approximately $5.6 million of estimated loss of revenues for 2021. And staff did undertake a detailed review of all line by line accounts to identify one-time savings that could mitigate the impact of these lost revenues on the 2021 budget. And finally, the financial impacts of COVID-19 are fully mitigated in this budget. So there is no net impact on the overall levy. So how did we do this? The next slide, please. As mentioned, the city is estimating revenue losses totaling $5.6 million for 2021. This is largely in services such as transit, parking, Sanderson Center, arenas and recreation, provincial offenses, and in our return on our investment income. However, departments have identified net employee compensation savings of almost $1.3 million to go towards mitigating those lost revenues. There's also been net savings identified from the reduction of supplies and services to be acquired by departments in 2021. Those savings total about $1.5 million and are mostly as a result of one-time line-by-line savings identified in various supplies, utilities, travel accounts, costs associated with in-person training, and community events. We've also used some provincial grant money to offset the impacts of the lost revenues on our 2021 budget. We've received Safe Restart Agreement funding for both transit as well as the municipal phase 2 funding under the Safe Restart Agreement as well. And once we took all that into account, we were still short about $1.1 million, but we fully anticipate that there will be surplus from the phase 1 funding that we received in 2020 that will be available to carry forward for use in 2021. So this is how the total financial impacts of COVID on 2021 budget have been mitigated. So please remember, as we proceed through the commission and the departmental budgets, that all of their COVID savings and costs have been identified here in the corporate finance budget under the new COVID-19 business unit, and they won't be reflected in their own budgets. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. This slide just indicates that the overall corporate financing portion of the total budget accounts for 9.5% of the overall proposed tax levy. Next slide, please. And as its name implies, corporate finance includes a number of budgets that are corporate in nature, including our capital and debt financing, tax supported costs related to the boundary agreement, supplementary taxes and payment in lieu of taxes, investment income, current and retiree benefits, utility financing revenues, corporate insurance, employee gapping savings, and the operating budget contingency. So overall, for 2021, this has resulted in a decrease of 5.2% to this series of accounts. Please note here also, though, that the savings from the recent corporate reorganization of $258,871 is captured here in this budget. And you will see throughout the commission budgets that the impact of the reorg is shown consistently this way. And this is because of the complexity of the reorg. We were unable to go back and restate 2020 budgets on a business unit basis. So presenting the impacts of the restructure in this manner throughout all of the departmental budgets will allow the committee to see those overall commission budgets on an apples to apples basis on the bottom line. Next slide, please. So before finishing up, we'll just highlight the major factors that are impacting the corporate finance budget for 2021. Firstly, with respect to changes to revenue, we are seeing some increased revenue as we anticipate some increased supplementary taxes due to increased building activity. We've estimated that as an increased revenue of $250,000. But we do have some decreased revenues impacting this budget. We have Brantford Power and Brantford Hydro loss of revenues. They previously rented space in various city facilities where they paid rent for that space, and they have now relocated to their new accommodations. So we will be losing that revenue, as well as I had mentioned previously, the payment in lieu reduction resulting from the casino reassessment. Moving on to previously approved council initiatives, we are phasing out a reserve contribution that was used to offset some wage increases that were approved in 2020. So that is increasing the budget by $230,000. And then we have built in the impact of report 2021-138, which was just approved at a special council meeting on February the 9th. With respect to contractual savings, this is related mostly to the boundary agreement. So we are phasing out payments to the county as part of the compensation for those boundary lands. That's resulting in a reduction to the budget of $171,000, as well as savings from decreased payments to property owners in the annex lands that are phasing into the city's tax rate. And that's an additional savings of $100,000. Next slide, please. Inflationary impacts that are impacting this budget is namely in our corporate insurance area, that seeing increases to both premiums and claims costs. With respect to employee compensation, there is a large decrease here. We had put money into the budget, into the 2020 budget to offset premium increases that were being experienced under phase 1 of the rate framework. Those amounts have been removed from this budget this year, and we do have a small increase to our retiree benefit premiums for 2021. We are removing some one-time costs of just over $500,000, and that's namely attributable to the net increase to the increase to the WSIB reserve that was needed last year to help offset our WSIB surcharges. And that's no longer required for 2021. And then we just have $4,200 of other minor reductions impacting this budget. So this is how we get from last year to our current year budget of almost $15.9 million. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Joel. Questions from members of the committee on the presentation? I have Councilor Van Tilburg first. You have the floor, sir.
Hello, Joel. You kind of opened and you kind of closed mentioning the casino and its assessment value. That casino was assessed around 150, 160 million dollars prior to 2016, and it's been constantly going down every year. So it's at, what did you say, 75 million dollars now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the value this time has been reduced from 93 million
That's
to
correct.
75 million. And prior to that, when it was reduced to 93 million, the previous value was 144 million.
140, so almost 150 million, then knocked down to 93, and now they've got it down to 75. What impact does that 93 to have to our going to 75 have to as an absolute dollar figure? What's that? How's that hit us?
It's approximately $400,000 lost revenue for 2021.
So I guess I'm just making a comment here that the value that the casino is presently assessed at is the same as it was assessed at in 2007. I'm sure there's a lot of property owners that would love to have their property taxes assessed at their 2007 rates. And that casino was just sold in a grouping a few months back for $3.3 billion in an allotment. So, you know, you've got to wonder what impact is doing when we're taking a casino, when everybody else's property taxes are going up, assessment values are going up, the city's booming, we're thing, and the one entity is dropping like a rock. That's got to hit us hard. To trying to make that up every year, it's not. That's $400,000. How much did we get in casino revenues for the last year? I know COVID was affected, so how much was that reduced last year from with COVID and the casino revenues? We probably got diddly. Do you have a number hanging in there?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We received about $1.2 million, almost 900. It was approximately 900,000 for the first quarter of last year, and then the casino was closed.
And then it dropped.
And then we received a final payment of 273,000.
Okay, and then basically they just gonna get 400,000 back from this assessment value. The reassessed values, giving them an extra $400,000.
Yes, the pill is
or
being
a loss to us, a loss to us. Wow. Just a comment, and I'm going to leave it at that. It's always been a bee in my bonnet. I don't think anybody else in the public has that kind of gift happening to them, where their tax assessment values drop to less than 50% of their value or 60% of their value or 2007 levels. I think that's just absurd.
Thank you, Councilor Van Tilburg. Councilor Martin, you have the floor now, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Joel. You seem to think that the grant from the government for COVID expenses was a little over $1 million. We're going to be able to carry that forward to 2021. Is that guaranteed, or is that wishful thinking, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're quite confident that
Okay.
that funding would be available for transfer into 2021. Yes.
Not guaranteed, but you're fairly confident. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Councilor McCurry, you have the floor, sir.
Sure, thank you. Through you to staff. Joel, in addition to the casino, we've also seen a number of large retail establishments that have successfully had their assessments reduced, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, recently we have seen that.
Yeah, so it's not just the casino. It's a trend in some of these larger commercial and retail properties. Could you state what we're anticipating to receive from the casino for 2021?
Through Mr. Chair, by way of the casino revenue contribution?
by way of our share of the gaming revenue?
We've forecasted $500,000 for this year.
Okay, so that's a pretty modest estimate, I would think. Thank you very much. Employee gapping this year is budgeted the same as last year. Could you tell us what the actual wound up at, Joelle, for 2020?
Through Mr. Chair, we are still finalizing some of those numbers, so I won't be able to provide that number this evening, but it's something that I can return to the committee.
Okay, is it going to be, I'd appreciate that if you would. Do you anticipate it being less than the budget for 2020?
We don't. We suspect because of COVID that
Okay.
there was some delayed hirings in 2020.
Yeah.
That are
Now the
skewing
big winner in this budget, and thank you to the CAO for all this hard work. And I can see right off the bat that we're doing some things a little bit differently this year, apparently. So our operating budget contingency drops by almost $1 million. Are you able to tell us in the public session tonight what that's about?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that is largely attributable to the increased funds we put in last year. It was a last minute adjustment to mitigate the WSIB premium increase. And those amounts remained in this budget for the year. They weren't restated to all the other departments. So they're out of here. And then the departments are seeing sharing a little bit of that increase across the board.
I'm sure they'd like to see a little more sharing. Do you expect that for 2022, that number would remain constant from 2021 then?
For 2022, we are, with respect to WSIB, we are expecting them to proceed with their transition to the new rate framework, which will see some premium increases to the city. But we do have a reserve established that will assist us in transitioning to those new rates.
Okay. As I look through some of the departmental budgets, I do see actuals for 2019. Are you anticipating that we're going to be able to update our budget documents with actuals for 2020 before we conclude our sitting?
If I understand, would we be able to provide an updated document with updated 2020 figures?
Correct. Is that your plan, or are we looking at what we're looking at?
Is this in reference to the line-by-line document?
No, ma'am. In some of the departmental budgets that I've looked through, and I haven't seen them all, what we're showing on the left-hand side of some of the charts is the 2019 actuals.
Correct.
Yeah.
We are not planning on providing a
Okay,
supplementary
fair
document.
enough.
No.
And you referenced the line-by-line budgets. Have you sent that out yet?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I believe that was sent out with your agendas last week.
Last week, okay. My oversight then. Thank you very much, Joelle.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Councilor Sless, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joelle, are there any forthcoming opportunities that you're aware of for financial assistance from the upper levels of government because of COVID? Are there any funds that we have the potential to access?
I'm not sure Joelle wants to answer that, or I can answer that, Councillor Sless. There are a few funds we're applying for. There's some trail funding as well as some infrastructure funding. Actually just announced infrastructure funding regarding extreme weather conditions and what have you, flooding and things like that, but also some trails. Indy's group has been doing lots of work on applications for grants on those two. Plus, you'll hear me speak later. We did apply for grants just before Christmas for audit accountability fund number 2, and we've received verbal. So yes, we're kind of scouring those, and when they come out, but there has been a number, and a number in the environmental area from FCM as well that Councillor Antosky keeps us up on our toes on.
Okay, so would those funds help offset our current budget, or would they be funds that would used in addition to our budget?
a good question, Council. Would depend on the grants terms, Councillor Sless. I mean, some could, like, if they come in after our budget's done, some could help us. They would apply. They would make a surplus at year end, which would then help next year's budget or help our reserves, whatever we choose to do. Sometimes grants ask for you have to increase costs, like match the two. So it depends on the terms of the grant. But most of the time they do help our budgets, but it's the timing of them. Most of the times, a lot of times they're after our budget and they just help us with our surplus and our reserves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slass. Mayor Davis, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Joelle, question about current and retiree benefits. So I read this right, it's going down about 432,000. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, there was a $500,000 reduction. Sorry, just let me get there. Yes, there's a $500,000 reduction. We had put a net $500,000 transfer into that WSIB reserve last year to help us build up the reserve to offset the costs of transitioning to the new WSIB rate framework. We've made that contribution. We feel that reserve is healthy now to help transition through the remainder. So we are removing that $500,000 transfer to the reserve from the budget this year. And that's being offset by an increase to our retiree benefit premium costs.
Yeah, and because if I look at that page you had for base budget increases and decreases, I see that line, which is the employee compensation line, right? 1,416,000.
A large part of that, $1 million of that, is actually attributable to the operating contingency budget, not the current and retiree benefit budget.
Yeah, okay, but it leads me to a question. I really don't understand or get a clear picture from this budget where we sit with our WSIB premium, because you've told us we've gone to new rate structure. And I recall the first thing I was told when I was elected is we got a $2 million special premium from WSIB dealing mainly with police services and their PTSD claims. So what's the status of that?
Right. So 2020 was the last year of the NEAR program. So our experience will no longer be compared to others, which then in recent years has resulted in us paying a surcharge. So that program has ended. The last payment was last year. And then WSIB is transitioning to a new rate framework whereby they'll recover a lot of those costs through increased premiums. So we did see that phase one of that happen in 2020 as well, but I'm not sure if it's because of COVID or other reasons. We're not seeing phase two of that. They've held our rates steady for the 2021 budget. So no increased premium. In addition, because of those transfers we made to the WSIB reserve, there is a $2 million balance in that reserve that we're expecting when we do move into increased premiums in 2022 and 2023, or we're expecting WSIB to do that, continue on with the rate framework, that we can access that reserve to help us phase into those higher rates.
Okay, so we're not paying that $2 million surcharge that we paid each of the last 2 years.
That's correct. That program has ended, yes.
And we haven't yet seen a corresponding increase in our base WSIB rate, or we've seen small rate increases?
There was an increase in 2020. So the transition to the new rates was a 3-year phase in. We did see, so we were kind of double whammied in 2020. We had to pay the last year of the surcharge and we saw the first of the premium increases. But for 2021, the rates have been frozen and they won't be continuing with that transition until at least 2022.
So how do we like net, what are we netting out of all that in comparative terms? We're paying $2 million less, or?
The impact of the premium increase last year was estimated to be $1 million. So we had built $1 million into our 2020 budget. And I would expect that the next two phases of that will be a similar dollar amount.
Okay, well, how about I'll do it this way. What do you expect we're going to be paying to WSIB this year in total in comparison to what we paid last year, including all surcharges?
The amount in 2021 for the premiums are expected to be similar. The only increase, it would be as a result of them increasing the earnings ceiling, but the rates for 2021 are exactly the same as 2020.
Minus the surcharge.
Minus the surcharge, which the surcharge in the end that we ended up paying for this last year was significantly less than what we had thought. And I don't have that number handy right now.
Okay, so it wasn't 2 million last year. Right. Can you get that for me?
Yes.
Okay. But we know it's going to hit us likely next year in terms of increased base rates.
In the form of premium increases, yes.
Okay. And do we have an estimate as to what that will likely be for next year?
I'm estimating similar experience to 2020, which we had estimated what was $1 million impact annually.
Okay. And I'm not sure where I sit with time, Mr. Chair, but just one last question. So it's still going to be experience, there'll be an experience rating. Our rating will be based on our claims at all or partly, or?
I'm not sure if Anita Zaloki is able to speak more to the new rate framework and how those rates are developed. Oh, I see her now.
Yes, thank you, Joelle. Anita Zaloki, Director of Human Resources. Through you, Mr. Chair. With the WSIB rate premium, the new process is a lot like paying car insurance. So if your claims increase, your rates will increase. The annual increases for premiums through WSIB are forecasted to be at least 5%, but they could be as high as 10% until we transition to the full rate framework. Joelle is correct that in 2020, the provincial government mandated that the WSIB rates be frozen.
And so they're not doing surcharges right now?
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no surcharges anymore as part of this new framework.
Okay. One last question. Given that this can be a big budget savings, if you do very well on your claims, WSIB claims, you do better and you get a lower rate. So what are we doing to focus on that as a corporate cost saving measure and also to safeguard and protect our employees?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We are working through the Health and Safety Division to manage all the claims. We have an active process when claims do occur. We are currently, we actually have finalized a recent third-party disability claim provider that will assist us in adjudicating the claims, both from a short-term disability perspective with particular focus on mental health issues, mental health claims, and working with WSIB on those to try and be more proactive and actively handle those claims when they occur.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me a little leeway there.
You're welcome. Councillor Vanderstel, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're looking exceptionally dapper this evening.
Thank you.
Through you to Joelle, if you're still hiding there somewhere. There you are. Joelle, with all your hard work, you came back with a 0.7 increase overall, I think. Is that what we're looking at?
Through Mr. Chair, the portion of the budget that is attributable to the city share of services is increasing 0.7% after its proportionate share of assessment growth. Yes.
Right. Okay. And in your experience, in a few years at the city now, have you ever come back as staff with a number around 0.7?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to say this is a low year.
Would you say it would be, all things considered, Joelle, being COVID and a lot of things that we have to consider, would it be one of the lowest years you've ever seen?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're fairly confident we have cut this down to the bone for obvious reasons?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, there's a lot of work put into this budget.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks, Joelle. Mr. Hutchings, if you're hiding there too. Oh, there he is. Sir, in budgets past, I know it has been the occasional practice to pad a budget so that, we can sort through and sift through and find some of the potential savings that we can pass on to our ratepayers or taxpayers, our people. In your perception and in your experience, Mr. Hutchings, is the city portion in any way, shape, or form a padded budget?
Short answer is no, Councillor Vanderstelt. That's never been my style in any organization I work with, whether it be at the university sector or the Region of Niagara before that when I was treasurer. I obviously managed, the budgets are a little different at this Region of Niagara. They gave me a target and I was told to meet it, and usually we always met it. There wasn't an unmet needs kind of category, but not my style. You can see that in unmet needs. Their previous years are 32 and 39. Right now there's 13 and they're ranked. And I think there's good news tonight on those unmet needs. You'll see some other things in those unmet needs. So it's not our style to come in high and have council bring it down. We want to come in and meet our target, and we've done that.
So you brought your A game, not your C game, right?
Brought our A game in a very, very odd year that council's going to see with the budget. It's hard. 2020 was not a normative year to compare year to year because it wasn't, many things were thrown off. Plus we had a reorganization which saved $260,000 in 2021, and it'll save $1 million in 2020. So it's a very different year, but our team and Joelle's team brought it all forward. And not only did we do this, we did it with going back in that COVID account, that $5.6 million as well. That slide she had is a very complicated thing where people went back and stripped their budgets, monies they weren't going to need this year, the travel, the various things they didn't need, they stripped it out.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Hutchings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderstelt. Councillor McCurry.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Well, I think one of the things that we really need to celebrate in this 2021 budget is the demise of the debt payment for the yellow rink at the Gretzky Center. In the landfill, lo these many years, we have finally finished paying the bill for that thing. And I don't know, I think we should have a cake maybe to celebrate. Joelle, could you tell me, I believe our annual cost to service that debt was $185,000 a year. Could you tell me going forward, what sort of a capital construction project could we finance with $185,000 a year, I guess amortized over 20 years?
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I return to you with that answer shortly?
I thought you'd have known. Sure, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Mayor Davis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think you and I might remember this, Councillor Carpenter. I believe you were on, former Mayor Mike Hancock invited me to a ceremony in the square where we blew out of the fountain a bunch of, it was a celebration because he had reached his lifelong goal for the city to be having no debt. I think you were in council at the time and you were probably there. So that was a great celebration. Since then, just kind of gone downhill, but depends on how you look at it, because of course through debt you're making an investment. But I just wanted to make that remark, Councillor Kermit, that you and I probably remember that I remember it very distinctly. But a question for the for our CAO, kind of following on Councillor Vanderstelt, and the approach that you've taken. I just want to clarify. So with staff, obviously, as you prepare a budget, you can, as a bureaucrat, you can have certain one approach is, I know with the board or whatever, then it'll happen. We'll get to where we really want to get to. And I saw that many times when I was previously on council. So
Mr. Chair, were you able to hear this?
Your internet's cutting out, Mr. Mayor.
I think I lost my internet.
I think so as well. We'll have to get back to you. Okay, I see no others on the list. Just to the CAO, we keep quoting the 0.7% number, but that's after the increase in assessment. So prior to assessment, what is the increase to the budget?
Without the assessment growth?
Yes.
Joelle has that number. I'd ask her to ask that. I believe it's assessment growth is 1.93, but it's proportion between the agency boards and commissions and the city operations. Joelle, do you want to add what our growth percentage was onto the 0.7?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So before taking assessment growth into consideration, the city's budget increase was 2.64 and the board's was 9.63 for an overall 4.6.
It's important to notice that when people quote the 0.7 number, we were lucky to have a lot of assessment increase this year, and that's what's been able to use those funds to bring the numbers down. Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify that. Thank you. Nobody else wants to speak? I want to know, does any member of the committee wish to add or take anything from this operating budget? It doesn't prevent you from doing something later on. Seeing none? Okay, I'm going to move on.
Mr. Chair, could I just answer a question?
Sure.
With respect to Councillor McCurry's question about the debt servicing. So in that particular debenture was a little over $2 million over 20 years, but rates are certainly better these days. So we could be looking at financing principal amount between 2.6 and $3 million that would have those annual servicing costs of about $185,000.
Yes, thank you. And to the mayor's point about burning the debt, when Mayor Hancock was here, those are times when we had interest rates at 6, 7, 8, 10%, not like the interest rates we have now, but interest rates are so low that the actual cost of building something goes up faster than interest rates go up. So sometimes investing makes a lot of sense at that point. Oh, I have other councillors wish to speak to this. Councillor McCurry.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just wanted to thank Joel for those numbers. So we could, we've taken that money out of the budget, of course, but had we kept it in, that could have been used to finance another capital project this year. I did want to remark on what the mayor said earlier. I do recall very well when the municipality celebrated its status of being debt-free, and I believe within 2 years they'd taken on debt.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Councillor Sless, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarity, the debt-free that everybody's talking about that was celebrated was actually a program that was put together by Mayor Bob Taylor and our then CAO, Jeff Wilson. And it was put together in 1992, and it took that long to get it out of debt, but that program started in 1992. I think that was the term after you left, Mr. Mayor, and I took your place.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sless.
Clean up, council.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to ask Joel to direct by an overview of 5A and 5B. Thank you.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. So we'll move on to step 5, which is consideration of the Chief Administrative Officer 2021 operating budgets. So information on these budgets can be found on page 17 of the preliminary 2021 operating budget document that you have. But if you do need to, you can use the hyperlink at this point in the worksheet, and that will take you there. So the total CAO budget for 2021 as presented totals $4,251,602. The CAO budget is made up of the Chief Administrative Office, Communications and Community Engagement, Community Events and Volunteers, and Economic Development and Tourism. And overall, this budget has an increase of 4.47% after the impacts of the reorg are taken into account.
Would you like me to start presenting, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Brian Hutchings, the CEO of the City of Brantford. It's an honor to present the CEO Commission to Council today. Next slide. I think I didn't realize we'd be talking so much in the past presentation about the overall budget. This is the city services, and again, what I manage. And yes, this is after assessment growth, Mr. Chair. With that, with city unmet needs requests, is a 0.85 total. If all the unmet needs were approved, it'd be 1.55 with after assessment growth, which all the other agency boards and commissions last year were also quoted without after assessment growth. Next slide. As Joelle mentioned, I'm responsible for planning and management of the city's operations, both day to day, but also in the future. And hopefully in the future, that's what you want me to do, is the strategy and work with this council, make sure policy in place. We look for the vision and future of the city of Brantford. There's 3 commissions now: people, legislative service and planning, as well as public works and community services, and community safety and social development. And the other 3 areas we're focused on today are communications and community engagement, as well as economic development, tourism, and they will, as well as community events and volunteers. Next slide. Now we're in the time of transition. The budget will be presented to you on the old organization structure. For instance, Paul Moore will be presenting community development after this, and next week I'll be presenting corporate services. Stepped into that role for the time being, and I'll be presenting that. We're presenting on the old budget, on the old org model. It was done in the middle of the budget cycle, so I think my finance staff were pretty frazzled to start with everything else going on with COVID and reorganization. So we decided to keep it where it was. Next year it'll be in the new organization model. This was the previous. The next slide will show the current one with the 3 commission model. If you go to the next slide. And then the other departments that are reporting to me, you can see communications, community engagement, as well as economic development, tourism, and community events and special volunteers we'll talk about today. Next slide. I won't go over these slides very quick. I'll go over these slides I won't even talk to these slides. They're there. They will always be there. We'll talk more about these in the future. We do have council priorities, the 9 of them. Go to the next slide. And the next slide. They're always in the forefront of my senior team. You're going to see a lot of this throughout this budget presentation. Council did a lot of work. You came to work on a Saturday for a day and did a lot of work in advance of that, come up with corporate priorities and council priorities, and we're making sure they get delivered over this term of council. Some of the budget pressures that we're seeing in my office, obviously COVID-19, we've spoken about already in Joelle's presentation. Adapting to methods of work will be interesting at the new City Hall. We're being praised across the country. Lee Sordo's getting lots of calls, and I've done radio interviews and as well as presenting at conferences in the future. But what we're doing in Brantford, it's seen as leading edge with the new City Hall and our work from home model. There's also remaining nimble. We're in a perfect position, Brantford, we were big enough that we have some size, but also small enough to move quickly compared to other cities. But we are a city in transition. It's exciting. We're investing in growth, but we need to respect our past. I've heard that from this council many, many times. Respect the history of Brantford. Council priorities I've mentioned. as well as KPMG service review opportunities. One of the key things for me over the next number of years will be staff development, continuous improvements, and creating a citizen-centric culture of the city. And also, more importantly, looking at this, developing diversity and inclusion process of the City of Brantford. We will continue on the Mayor's Housing Task Force and looking at affordable housing and homeless system. We've done a very good job over the last year in a homeless system. We want to continue that, as well as an economic recovery plan. Our small businesses in the City of Brantford will be looking to us on that economic recovery plan. We also obviously need to keep looking at replacing our aging missile infrastructure. And I already mentioned the new City Hall move, as well as the unfunded unmet needs I've mentioned previously. To put this budget, next slide, budget in perspective, this budget I'm presenting today is 2.5% of the total budget. You can see the various, the total city budget. You can see the various breakdown of the various units, mine representing what I manage, 13.2%. Communications, and every one of my directors is here. We'll do a small presentation. Communication, community engagement, 20%, community events and volunteers, as well as economic development, tourism, taking up 54%. Each one of these areas has had changes. Community communication, community engagement has taken on the Parks and Recreation Communications group, brought them in and merged them just in November, part of the reorganization, as well as community events and volunteers have been restructured, reporting to my office. And they're new to me, and they're doing a great job thus far. And as well as the Sanderson Center in the last year is now reporting in economic development and tourism. Next slide. You can see again, this is just highlighting this 2.5%, which I think this is a standard template for finance to throw this slide in. I won't go into great detail on this slide. Next slide. Just building the budgets. Many of these things will be explained. We've had some change of revenue. We've lost some sponsorship loss because of the lack of sponsorship. We do have an increase to Canada Day at 63,500, but you're going to see when Lori Don presents that, this is where the budget will be really confusing everybody. Just to let you know, we have increased Canada Day as per the discussion at council last year in November of 2019, the discussion there. But Lori Don, when she presents her budget, will explain she's pulled that out and put that in the COVID savings account to offset some of the expenses in that account. But she didn't want to battle to increase her budget for 2022. So Joelle and finance team came up with this in and out, and that's where people scrubbed their budgets, literally went back and scrubbed their budgets and found all kinds of COVID-19 savings. That's a good example. But that does increase my budgets, overall the CEO's budgets. You can see some of the other matters, some reorganization caused the employee compensation to go up, as well. The total restructure was 441,000. The next slide. I'm going to skip over this slide, and I'm going to just gives the total, and then I'm just going to go to this. All these right now, each one of my directors is going to jump in and explain their budgets, and some of them over, like you'll see mine at 73% over, but you can see overall the budget is 4.47. We'll explain this. This is a very complicated year with the reorganization. The big number in this, we took on $441,000 more in restructure. We've made the organization more vertical, less horizontal. So there's more people reporting, but it's also caused for lots of savings, but also differences in numbers and budgets being bigger for various GMs and the CEO. But overall, it saves $260,000 that restructuring. I will flip it over to Maria now to talk about communication and community engagement. Maria.
Thank you, Brian. Through you, Chair Carpenter. Good evening, Mayor Davis and members of the committee, my fellow staff and the viewing public. I am Maria Visacki, Director of Communications and Community Engagement, and I appreciate the opportunity to share an overview of the city's communication plans and operating budget for 2021. Next slide. First, just a quick look back at what we accomplished in the extraordinary year that was 2020. Anyone who goes into the field of communications, especially now, does so recognizing that incidents related to people's health and safety or issues that have corporate implications to any organization do not always happen within an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. window. Now, more than ever, technology has made the expectation for a response immediate, and people's appetites for information is insatiable. Unlike other organizations who monitor communications around the clock in shifts, We are a tight, hardworking team. I often say to the team that we're the municipal version of an ER department, always triaging service requests, guided, of course, by council's priorities in our role during the pandemic as an essential service provider. By the numbers, in 2020, communications processed 1,305 communication service requests through CityNet. These are requests that come into communications on a daily basis from our colleagues across the organization. Some of them are routine web content changes to the various city websites. Many others are fulsome integrated multimedia campaigns. In 2020, we also issued 210 press releases, responded to 285 media inquiries, and those two figures are nearly double this activity from last year. In addition to that, we manage content on 13 city social media platforms that span across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Given the current reorganization structure that Brian has already alluded to, you'll note that in the comms budget, there are some changes that I'm pleased to report to the committee tonight that will actually result in efficiencies and savings for the organization overall. Next slide. So while the budget line officially says a 17.27% increase, 100% of that number is attributed to the realignment. So as Brian mentioned, in late November, we did realign the Parks and Recreation marketing function, was moved to the communications department, and every single line item associated with that 17.27% increase is attributed to that staff person coming over, in addition to the Parks and Recreation advertising budget being realigned to communications, as well as the leisure guide. So in effect, communications and community engagement is delivering a net 0% increase to the organization in 2021, which is important to emphasize going into 2022, when we will be back to show you additional savings as a result of this recent reorganization. Next slide. I wanted to share with the committee, this is just a fraction of some of the campaigns that we developed in 2020 to support the continuity of city business and council's priorities. I'll just pause here for a few seconds so you can take it all in. These are general campaigns. These are not specific to the pandemic. I'll share a glimpse of that in a couple of slides. Next slide. This slide features a number of additional public engagement specific campaigns developed in 2020, some of them longer term projects that you will see continue on the city's new Let's Talk Brantford engagement portal this year. Next slide. And finally, here's a quick look at the messaging and campaigns developed in response to and as a result of COVID-19 programming changes, which we had to fit in, of course, in addition to our regular day-to-day responsibilities and supporting requests to continue to advance the city's business. Next slide. In terms of our focus in 2021, as I mentioned, we will be spending some time realizing more efficiencies in our department as a result of organizational changes that, again, I would look forward to sharing with the committee during the estimates process next year. That reorganization is recent, and I'm currently in the process of evaluating all of the advertising plans with staff to see where efficiencies can be realized. Of course, 2021 is an exciting year for the city in that we will be moving into a new city hall. So much of our team's time will be spent on both internal and external communications to share that exciting event. and to share with the community how the citizen-centered approach will be a much better customer service experience for residents. Of course, we'll continue to amplify and promote the Let's Talk Brantford new engagement portal, and continue with COVID-19 messaging as required throughout the pandemic, and consistent with the provincial framework for reopening. Of course, we'll also spend a lot of time on recovery when we're all in a position to be able to do that. And when we are ready to reopen the city in a more fulsome way, we have some very exciting plans to demonstrate what makes our community a destination of choice to live, work, study, and play. So basically, when we get that green light, we already have a campaign ready to implement. So we're excited about that. And I just end on this last note that informing the community has never been more important. I've been doing this role for with the city almost 7 years, and in my career in communications more than 20 years. And I've never felt prouder to be using my skills towards a higher purpose, and that purpose being actually helping to protect the health and safety of my fellow citizens. So I just want to leave with the committee that this is a responsibility that the comms and community engagement team takes very seriously. It's an exhausting time, but it's also a gratifying one that we are making such an important contribution to the health and safety of our community. And with that, I will pass the baton to my colleague, Kevin Finney. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria. Good evening, councillors. It's my pleasure. Next slide, please. It's my pleasure to submit the proposed 2021 operating budget for economic development tourism. As most of you are well aware, the department comprises 3 divisions: economic development, tourism Brantford, the Small Business Resource Center, and most recently the Sanderson Center for the Performing Arts. Overall, the department's looking at a 3.14% increase, which equates to $70,000 overall. And in terms of some of the significant increases and decreases, a large portion of this is base wage and benefit increases, as well as some of the sponsorship losses that Brian alluded to earlier at the Sanderson Center itself, one-time costs, as well as the overall staff have been able to identify a lot of efficiencies across the department, which has been a lot of savings, totaling about $30,000. I've also taken this opportunity to highlight some of the big wins and success stories throughout 2020. You can see at the bottom of the slide, the Industrial Appreciation Awards, the mixed curling bonspiel we were able to hold before COVID hit. One of the flagship investments that was announced for heritage hockey sticks that the mayor mentioned last night in his opening address. And finally, one of the small businesses that started at the BRC, Your Home, Your Way. Next slide, please. In terms of significant projects and council priorities on the horizon for the forthcoming year, economic recovery is still front and center in our department. We're going to continue to support the local business community and implement the remaining items in the economic recovery action plan. In terms of council priorities, the advancement of the Cultural Hub in collaboration with the community arts organizations. This was formerly referred to as the mid-sized performing space. We'll also be investing in the feasibility for a consolidated museum and archives facility. There'll be a review done on the true cost of service and revenue model for the Sanderson Center, which will be brought forward in Q3 of this year to council for consideration. And last but certainly not least, promoting some of those complementary private sector enterprises that will increase tourism across the city for the arts, history, culture, and sustainable places. And again, I also chose some specific pictures to feature here. The first picture is the announcement for the business education tax reduction policy that was held at JP Bowman. The second is one of the film production Welcome to the City Murdoch Mysteries at the Carnegie Building. And the third picture is Casa Santa, who received some federal funding along with Slacan Industries prior to COVID. And last but certainly not least, MPP Boma, Jason Fisher, and myself at Apotex Pharmachem for the donation of hand sanitizer that was generously donated through that industry to the community. That is all from my end. Again, I'm not sure if there's a slide after this, but I'm passing it back over to Brian.
Now now it's Lori Dunn has been.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, Brian. Lori Dunn.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair Carpenter, Mayor Davis, and members of council and the viewing public. Sorry, I just lost my. Sorry about that. My name is Lori Dawn Cave, and it's wonderful to see everyone tonight. It's my privilege to present the division budget for community events and volunteer development, now an exciting new portfolio within the CAO's commission. Next slide. The 2021 net operating budget for this new division is $528,403, and it includes a variety of programming elements that directly and positively impact our community. Included in this are Harmony Square engagement through programming and special events, a wonderful annual roster of activities that are desperately missed by our community, most of which did not occur in 2020. Brantford's Canada Day celebration, of course, which was also canceled in 2020. A variety of neighborhood park programming, providing support and resources to our private special event organizers that offer value through special events that take place in our city and through the seat committee. Providing support and resources to our dedicated City of Brantford volunteers who bring enormous value to shaping the culture of our community, along with recognizing their efforts and commitments. And lastly, a new element to the division is overseeing the corporate events that are planned in the city, celebrating milestones achieved by our city, such as capital and infrastructure projects, where the community is invited to celebrate these achievements. The budget reflects a 55.92% increase, or $189,517, which is attributed to a realignment of wages and benefits resulting from the reorganization of the division and its transition over to the CAO's commission. A 2019 council approved increase, which CAO referred to for the Brantford's Canada Day budget. And lastly, a decrease resulting from the realignment of facility costs that transition from the business unit over to facilities and security department. Next slide. While searching for photos to include in the presentation, what resonated to me personally was the smiles that were on the faces of those in attendance at our events. The photo on the right was taken 1 year and 1 day ago today, and it was the 2020 Chili Cook-Off. And that event was the last event that occurred in Harmony Square before the pandemic took over. Events bring joy. We have all experienced it, and along with that joy comes an increase in the sense of belonging and community pride. Through events, our community becomes united, armed with a sense of inclusion and well-being. By activating our public spaces and parks, we have the privilege of providing unique, fun, and joyful experience to our residents. Also, events are a critical way for our citizens, especially our youth, to become engaged in volunteerism, learn new skills, meet and engage with others, all proven ways to reduce isolation. Next slide. The pandemic has had a significant impact on community events that take place in our community. The lack of these events has left our community with a void. It is of my opinion, although I am biased, that the City of Brantford employs the most dynamic special events team in the country. They are a small but mighty group of skilled and energetic staff. This team is committed to quality engagement opportunities for our community. And if the opportunity to program within the COVID-19 Ontario framework exists, creative programming and events and activities would bring enormous value to our city. A plan to facilitate more smaller scaled events in a safe manner, which will provide opportunity for both our residents and our local entertainers in the entertainment sector. Next slide. Thank you to everyone. And although we aren't quite here on the left, we can get to the right side in a safe manner and make a difference in the lives of our citizens through special event planning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And that's all for me.
So, Mr. Chair, just to wrap up the presentation, I mean, two slides left. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I followed Lori Dawn in pretty boring presentation. Just to wrap up, this is, if you switch slides, please. My net up budget is 559,000. It's went up 73%. It's a bit of it's basically through reorganization. The manager performance improvements was always in my budget, but it was moved over and brought back. So that really is that plus benefits and another small change. We did go over some overhead recoveries from my group. Some things went up line by line. I can go through that, but some things went up, like small things like general supplies and computer hardware, and some things we stripped out from COVID, and that's where the savings, because we aren't doing travel and things like that. So next slide. Mr. Chair, this is probably a good news slide. It was in here, in your package. We just received verbal updates. So on these unmet needs that council may consider, these unmet needs that Councillor Utley would have chaired this group, the Business Recovery Task Force, aka looking at the whole building review. There was a KPMG recommendation that came in last October or November regarding implementing the building review task force recommendations that came in. That's, I know you're on, Mr. Chair, and as well as other councillors. It recommended hiring a project management professional for 18 months, as well as intermediate planner to put the system in place that KPMG laid out. We did apply to the governments on December 23rd for audit accountability funds number 2. It's not officially announced. We don't have anything in writing, but we received verbal confirmation that the first line will be paid for us, the project management professional, and staff are going back trying to. We're looking at how we can fund the intermediate planner out of some reserves, possibly the building reserves, the building department reserves, because many of this will be going over their processes. And so we'd like to bring this back. I can't confirm 100% because we don't have anything in writing right now from the province. It looks very positive that the first item will be paid for. I can confirm that by March 8th when this is referred to those, if this committee so deems it should. And as well as intermediate planner, we plan on bringing back a proposal that will be paid for as well. So they will not affect levy this year, but we will have some work done between now and March 8th. So that is our presentation, Mr. Chair, and we thank you for your indulgence and your time in this committee's time.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. CEO. We'll take questions on all of the presentations. And first off, I'll have the mark. I have Councillor Vanderstout. Councillor Vanderstout, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rewind all the way back to Maria's second frame, I think it was, and if Maria is still available. Maria, you mentioned that you had double the work this year over last year. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
Through the chair, what I was trying to characterize was specifically the news releases and the media inquiries were double last year.
Is there one reason for that, or are there a bunch of reasons, Maria?
I would say that the pandemic is the primary reason. We issued as many communications about the pandemic as we did about the continuity of regular city business. It just had and continues to have such a huge impact on city operations. For example, last week we had to do communications telling the public how our programs and services would change now that we were in an orange restrict designation. If that changes again, we'll have to go through another process of communicating that out to the public. And we do that with a media release and with a social media campaign. So that is work that was not part of our work plan in 2020 and continues to be very consuming for the department.
Right, and the 17% or plus percent increase in your budget isn't reflective of an actual increase, but it's reorg.
It is. It's a 17.27% increase, and it's 100% attributed to the reorganization. So a zero net increase to the organization. There was no increase to the comms budget.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. That matters still. Councilor Utley, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. I've got a question about continuous improvement to Brian. Brian, how is CI being managed across the organization?
We're very fortunate with Asia's maternity leave. We've been able to hire a gentleman named Steve Babcock, who has a lot of experience in this. He's online right now with us. So he can step in, but we were working on CI or lean process through last March. We're supposed to go to KPMG beginner kind of training, this whole senior team. Obviously, it got canceled in March, then punted till August, and it got canceled again. COVID really put a slowdown on that, but Steve's present since November. We created a hot team for all customer experience and wayfinding of the new city hall and a whole bunch of new initiatives. And also even he's been kicking off the building review task force, getting the team together to start that process, to put this application in. And so they're all using CI methods that Steve's brought to the city. And what Steve's done as well is he's found there's a lot of people buried within, sorry, he's wrong turn, in our midst within the city that are have lean and also CI training that Steve's uncovered. They've come to him, and now he's got a little army working with him through our organizational change management team, made up of middle level managers that are trying to build some momentum around CI as well as change management, the organization, and also around customer experience.
And how is this being measured?
Steve, do you want to jump in here? This is your area. I know you're online here, Steve.
I would love to. Thank you. So through the chair. So my name is Steve Babcock. I'm the manager of corporate initiatives, as Brian mentioned. Great question around measurement. I'm glad you asked it. So I think that's going to be the big piece for us in 2021. Really, before you jump into continuous improvement, it's important that you understand what you're trying to improve. So we are looking at implementing a corporate performance measurement program right across the city, bringing consistency to how we measure our performance across all of the different service areas. And I think that's going to be a really key piece to getting that in place, and then really moving forward in an aggressive way with a lean management program. But I think it's important we get those performance measurements in place before we jump into continuous improvement too deep.
Are you setting up the benchmark in each department?
Yes, through the
Not
chair.
a benchmark, but benchmarks.
That's exactly what we're going to be looking into is how exactly we measure benchmarks through the department, but also the impact that this has on customers as well. So measuring from an internal perspective, how we perform internally, but also identifying some performance measures that really hits home to our customers and what makes a difference to our customers as well. So we'll be looking at a very fulsome program when it comes to measuring performance, right from internal benchmarks to looking at customer experience and really what's meaningful to customers as well.
Steve, are you providing any guidance or training to managers, directors in CI and lean processes?
Absolutely, that'll be part of the plan. I'm certified in lean and other continuous improvement methodologies, and I think right now it's about finding the right balance and finding the right methodology that's going to work very well with the city. And I'll go back to this whole idea of performance measurement is going to be a key piece there, and making sure we're using a good methodology that's going to bring the right performance measures. And really, when it comes down to continuous improvement, there's all sorts of methodologies out there, and it really comes down to what it is you're trying to accomplish as an organization. Are you trying to find efficiencies? If so, you may look at lean as a primary methodology. If you're looking to perhaps improve the customer experience. You may look at human-centered design or a customer experience journey mapping. There's all sorts of tools out there that we'll be bringing in, depending on, and really it's going to be specific to departments and individual projects, depending on what the objectives are and what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Chair, do I have time for another question? If not,
No, you go ahead.
Back up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you to Mr. Hutchings, with the unmet needs for the project manager and the intermediate planner, what are their in a general sense? What would their duties be?
Sorry to keep deferring this, but we pre-rehearsed this, and Steve's going to answer this question.
Okay.
He wrote, sorry.
Can we hold off that till we get to that section? We're going to be at that section very shortly, Councilor Lee, if you don't mind, and no members of council can speak to it. Okay, thank you. Ms. Daniels, would you provide an overview of step 5D for us, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to take a quick stop at step 5D just to explain the unmet needs process, given as this is the first time through this worksheet, we will have seen unmet needs. So the Estimates Committee will have the opportunity to consider unmet needs that have been identified and forwarded to this process. And they'll be presented first on each applicable commission-specific evening. And after an opportunity for questions on those needs, the committee can refer those needs that it wishes to consider further to a later step in the worksheet. And what this process does is allow all the unmet needs the opportunity to be equally vetted initially, with final consideration or approval of the needs that have been referred to that future step to be considered on one evening. So there are, I believe, 13 unmet needs that have been corporately ranked. Those can be found in your operating budget package on page 8. And you can take the hyperlink at this step of the worksheet if you need to see those needs in their ranked order. So as we go through certain commission-specific steps of this worksheet, there will be that opportunity initially to refer those needs to a later date, which I believe right now is scheduled for March the 8th.
Thank you. So on this page in this report, there's only actually 2 unmet needs. So we're going to take them one at a time. Accepting them to be moved over to a further date does not mean you've formalized that they are going to be passed. It just means that they are going to be considered and fulsome with the other unmet needs that get passed on as we get through the budget. So the first unmet need, of course, the CAO, I think I'll let the CAO highlight what the new information he just brought us on these 2 unmet needs and how he plans on funding them.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And I'll just speak to the first one if we're doing that one first. The very first one, as I said, we applied for a grant. Steve Babcock and myself applied for a grant back in December. We just received verbal confirmation that we'll fund this position. Again, it's not official. We'll have that shortly in the next, should have by the end of this week or next week. So we will have an answer this March 8th. So it is referred to March 8th. We're pretty assured that that will be paid for, and we can address that on March 8th. If Councillor Utley wants an explanation of this job, which he asked for earlier, Mr. Babcock's available to provide that. So, Mr. Babcock.
Thank you, Brian. So through the chair, the project management position is going to be put in place to help move along the recommendations that came through the KPMG report. So the recommendation, in addition to the 40 recommendations that came out of that report, they also, KPMG also laid out a fairly nice plan on how we deliver on these recommendations, which included creating a governance structure around this project, so putting a steering committee in place, and also adding a project management position, and of course the second unmet need as well, which is the intermediate planner. So this project manager would be brought in to manage the whole project and get those recommendations implemented as many as possible within the allotted time frame.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Any other questions from members of the committee? I do have Councillor Sless. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to Brian. Brian, procedurally, would you like these two unmet needs that you think you have a way of dealing with, but in order to deal with them, would you like them referred to the March 8th meeting so that
Yes.
you have your opportunity there?
Yes, I could, Mr. Chair, and I think what I'm saying is when I come back on March 8th, I'm almost say 90% sure that we'll both be funded at another source, so I can reduce them out of the levy, but I just need these next 2 weeks, one from the province and one looking at a building reserve, so yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, if you're looking for resolutions, I'd be pleased to move the two of them, seeking a second.
We're going to deal with one at a time first because of the funding. So I see you have a seconder, Councillor Vanderstelt. So item 25, the professional manager, professional 18-month contract be referred to step 11 of the sheet. Councillor Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you. Question through you to Mr. Hutchings. Probably applies to both these positions. With these two positions, will part of their function be to deliver savings from the KPMG report?
This is, yeah, through Mr. Chair, through Mr. Carpenter, this is the building review. When Steve Babcock started, why I laughed when you said that was Steve and I, there's two KPMG reports. We often got them confused. And so many times I was on the phone with Steve and we were talking about the wrong things. So that's why I laughed. I apologize for digressing. This is the KPMG report regarding building review task force. It's not the service review. Back in August of 2019, that was the other KPMG report. This was the one on the building review task force that's going to look at setting timelines when developers bring in their application, their building apps, their planning, all that process, and put it online so that developers can see where their application is, and for our staff to move things along, those sorts of things, right from our building department, right to our planning department, development engineering, our legal department, everybody. This is that report on the building review task force. So there's not necessary savings. It's a process for internally for developers, for us to be more transparent developers, but also for us to follow and be more efficient for our development community. So it's the other KPMG report, the building review task force. So we don't predict a lot of savings, but we do predict better processes internally.
Which is also very important. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we refer to it as the building review KPMG report, we would not be confused. Is there any other comments? Seeing none, I'm calling the question on the item number on page 25, the project manager professional contract for 18 months. I'm calling the question. There you go.
The referral of item 5D1 carries unanimously on recorded vote. Members of the committee vote in favor as follows. Councillors Vanderstelt, Sless, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Weaver, Utley, McCreary, Carpenter, Van Tilburg, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm either accepting a resolution or comments on the second one, which is the intermediate planner. Which, Councillor Sless, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I will move this one as well, seeking a seconder.
Yes, I think Councillor Weaver was a. No, it wasn't. Sorry, it was the mayor. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Seconded by the mayor. Well, maybe it was Councillor Weaver. You moved around as it changed. Okay, so I put down Councillor Weaver because it was him. Sorry, Councillor Sless. When your speaker come up, you moved in my screen. Threw me off. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this one? And the CAO, could you describe where you think funding for this is going to come from?
I think thank you, Mr. Chair. A portion of funding, again, we'll bring back final things on March 8th. Portion of this funding will come from that auditability accountability fund. A portion of that will be paid for this position, but also we feel some of it can come out of the building reserves, which are in the millions, to help pay for some of that as well. There might be some. We're got it down this afternoon, about $20,000 left over for this position, but give us another week and we'll figure that out.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'm going to call the question on this one to be referred.
The referral for item 5D2 carries unanimously on recorded vote. Members of the committee vote in favor as follows. Councillors Vanderstelt, Celeste, Marn, and Toski, Wall, Weaver, Ali, McQuarrie, Carpenter, Van Tilburg, and Mayor Davis.
Timing is working out very, very well. So do any members that wish to add any motions to increase or decrease the operating budget? I see none. So we'll be moving to step 6 right after dinner. So we'll break from now till 6:30. Timing is perfect. Thank you. Okay, at 6:30, I'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you, and I apologize to the members of the committee. The agenda that's left is rather short, but I know the break may be needed for those that work during the day. And if you are looking at the agenda before the meeting and you find that it's short enough that you would like to skip the break, just send me a quick email and I can make the adjustment on these kinds of short agendas. So we'll just see how the night goes, which it looks pretty short now. Thank you. Joel, would you please provide an overview of step 6A and 6B, please?
Yep, Mr. Chair. So we're moving on now to step 6, which is consideration of the Community Development 2021 operating budget. So information on this budget can be found on page 103 of your operating budget documents. And you can take that hyperlink at this stage of the worksheet so that you can get there electronically now. So the community development budget for 2021 totals $2,614,681. It is comprised of both the planning budget and the building budget. The planning budget has been reduced 11.74% and building 0.5% for an overall commission reduction of 7.41%.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, thank you. We're going to have a presentation from our General Manager, Paul Moore. Paul, are you prepared there? Welcome, Paul. Please go ahead with your presentation. Before you start, Paul, Paul's been with us for a lot of years and he's moving on to another opportunity in his future. Paul, we wish you well, and we really have enjoyed your company and your leadership as members of council and as the committee. Thank you for all that you've contributed to the city of Brantford. It's a better place because of you. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carpenter. I appreciate that. Good evening, Councillor Chair Carpenter, Mr. Mayor, and members of Estimates Committee. I'm Paul Moore, General Manager, Community Development, here to present the 2021 operating budget for the Commission. I'm joined by Andy McMahon and Nicole Wilmot from Planning Department and Building Department. Excuse me. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each of them for their diligence and hard work in putting these budgets together. This is their first time through the budget process, and they've done an amazing job, and I appreciate their help and support. I'd also quickly like to take this opportunity to thank the staff in the Finance Department who have supported us throughout this entire budget process, and I don't think we would be where we are without their support and help. So big thanks to that team. Next slide, please. So the Community Development Commission consists of Planning Department, Building Services Department, which also includes property standards and bylaws. The management team is made up of 2 directors, Andy McMahon from Building and Nicole Wilmot from Planning, and 4 managers. Basically, the Commission has oversight of all development approvals across the city. That includes maintaining the official plan and strategic long-range priorities, review and issuance of building permits, and we provide inspections, as well as providing bylaw enforcement of the bylaws that are contained within the Building Department. And as previously noted, the Commission is coming in at a decrease of negative 7.41% overall on the operating budget for 2021. Next slide, please. So the top 3 council priorities for community development. The first is to complete the new official plan, and we've wrapped that up in January, and the bylaw to enact the official plan will come to council for final approval in March. Part of that approval of the official plan is establishment of the new urban growth center boundary, and this relates to third priority, which I'll get to shortly. Finally, we'll need to submit that new official plan to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for final approval, and completion of the official plan does not have an impact on this budget year. Second priority is to improve municipal capacity for bylaw enforcement. This budget will implement recommendations from the KPMG report regarding adding vehicles for building inspectors, That'll include tablets within those vehicles so that they can work within their cars. Also providing them identifiable clothing for building staff when they're on site, so they're easily recognized, and increasing the size of the bylaw enforcement team to address current demands and expectations. The third priority is downtown reinvestment, and we had a fulsome discussion last night on the downtown CIP. So we are creating that CIP to develop incentives to encourage development in the downtown, and we'll be coming back in a few months with an enhanced program that council can consider. The program aligns with the new urban growth center boundary from the official plan. So we've got some consistent boundaries now throughout the downtown. And again, completion of this project does not have an impact on the 2021 budget. Next slide, please. So the budget pressures and challenges, a lot of experience, I'm sure you'll hear from everyone, is related to COVID-19. Our big pressure has been with bylaw enforcement staff. Enforcing of provincial regulations has been extremely challenging for staff and has had an impact on the budget, as we were required to bring on 2 contract employees. So we've increased the budget there to address those 2 staff. And in addition to this added pressure of dealing with the COVID-19 issues, staff have still had to respond to the regular property standards calls that they would receive. Recruiting additional staff and trying to maintain current service levels has also been challenging over the past year, and we've seen this both in terms of building and bylaw staff. Completing the settlement boundary expansion in the new official plan under current provincial requirements has been completed. It's been a challenge, as everyone knows. The provincial policy regime has changed numerous times, and implementation of the new official plan through our block planning process and development applications will create budget pressures in the upcoming year 2022 in terms of additional planners and building staff being required. Supply of land is always a challenge and a pressure. The supply of developable land and serviceable land, without the boundary expansion lands coming on, we are continuing to run those lands down, and attracting and retaining businesses with a shortage of land and servicing constraints remains a challenge. Infill development is a complicated process. However, it is essential in the future growth of our city. Next slide, please. So overall, community development takes up 1.6% share of the 2021 budget. And when we break that 1.6% down, building accommodates 40% of that, and planning is 60%. Next slide, please. So when we build the budget, we started with our 2020 council approved budget, which was $2.8 million. Then from that, we build it up, and we had changes in revenue. So we brought in an additional $273,000 from early fee approvals. We've had efficiencies of just over 14,000. Employee compensation, wages and benefits have gone up just over 100,000, 105,000. Inflation accommodates for about 30,000, and then we have a one-time removal of 60,000, which was related to vehicles that were not purchased for bylaw last year. And then we have a fleet charge of $2,500. So that leaves us with our 2020 adjusted base budget of $2.6 million. Next slide, please. When we look at the building department, they are rate supported under the Building Code Act, so they are to come out at a net zero. So we see in building department changes to revenue, almost $89,000 increase in revenue to offset that zero budget. Efficiencies of $565. Employee compensation, wage and benefits have gone up about $45,000. 10,500 on inflation with various increases across the department, and then other charges, corporate overhead of around 33,700. So that nets us back out to a zero. Next slide, please. So when we look at the overall 2021 operating tax supported, so planning department and property or bylaw enforcement and property standards, excuse me, we're coming in with a gross revenue of 1.1, expenditures of 3.7 million, and a net tax supported budget of 2.6. Next slide, please. And again, building department at the rate supported, their budget is coming in at just over $2 million for 2021. Next slide, please. So in total, when we look at planning and building, you can see the numbers there. Our 2020 budget was 2.8, 2021 we're down to 2.6. We've had an overall decrease of 209,000, which nets us out at a decrease of 7.41% overall. Next slide, please. So in summary, completion and implementation of the official plan and boundary expansion lands through development remains the Commission's highest priority. Supply of available land is decreasing and infill projects are complicated but essential for the growth, overall growth of the city. We have an increase in development activities with current staffing complement and ongoing changes to provincial policies makes it difficult to maintain development timelines. And vacancies and recruitment in the departments has created a challenge to deliver regular service levels. However, on the up note, building and construction activity continues to grow, and we're coming out of the best year we've ever had in 2020. And I only predict that things will continue to get better and continue to grow with record highs. So at this point, that concludes my presentation, and Nicole and Andy are here to help with any questions that the committee might have. Thank you very much.
It's the opportunity for comments on the members of the committee. I have none. Does anybody wish to say anything to Paul? Your last chance, Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, where'd he go? This year disconnected us, and I apologize for that. I wish we would have seen more of each other. I do enjoy having our conversations about the Paris to Ancaster and riding our bikes. So I hope wherever you're going, it does allow you to ride your bike a lot more often than you have in the last couple of years. So thank you for all the work that you've done for the city, and thank you personally. You really helped me learn about the planning and building processes of the city. You were a tremendous help to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Weaver.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, you are a true professional. It's been wonderful working with you over the past 8, 9, 10 years. You lose track after a while, but you've always, I've always held you in great esteem, and you stuck to your guns many times, and you truly believed in what you were doing. So I thank you for that. What a way to go out, Paul. You know, you had a record year last year, and you've come in under budget as well. So I think that's a wonderful ending to your very good career with the city. And I hope that I get an opportunity to have a coffee with you or tea before you take off. Okay, all the best and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Davis next, but I'd like to leave you to last, Mayor Davis, if you don't mind, so that you can round it out for us. If that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, then I have Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of my comments are similar to Councillor Weaver's. We started at the same time, Paul, and your world baffled me, and you spent a lot of time with me helping me understand the process, and I still came back with some of the same questions as a plan would change. And so for someone new both to council and new to the world of planning and building, I really want to thank you for your support and for your patience. And thank you for taking us through this enormous project called the boundary expansion and all of the turns and you know, different directions that took, and stops and starts, And certainly us giving you a hard time saying, can't we do this faster? Can't we do this bigger? Can't we do this smaller? And you always tried to find a solution, but stuck to what you knew was right. So I really want to thank you for your service, and pleased to have met you. And I thank you for all you've taught me.
Thank you, Councilor Toski.
Thank you.
Councilor Wall.
Awesome, thank you. I'll be quick. I used to be able to say I was new here, but I mean, this is my 3rd year. But I do remember fondly when I was the new guy. And I remember just kind of getting to know staff. And I remember you were the guy that everyone told me I had to talk to if I had questions. And pre-COVID, anytime I'd stop by City Hall, I would walk by and you'd be there in your office. And I just really appreciate how, even though I had no idea what I was doing, you still treated me with respect and were more than willing to teach me something new and answer all of my crazy questions. And I'm sure there were just so many of them. You're amazing. You know that you're amazing. And I'm going to miss you, man. And I hope that you won't be a stranger and that, you know, maybe you'll still come to a city council meeting every now and then. Okay, maybe you won't. But seriously, thank you so much for just being a really great guy and for being amazing. I hope you enjoy your retirement because you totally deserve it, especially after your years and years and years of service to this community. So yeah, thanks.
Just a correction, Paul's not retiring. He's moving on to other career opportunities. He's too young to retire. So
I don't know why. Yeah, sorry. I got caught up in the moment there. You know what I mean, Paul. Whatever you do, I'm sure you're going to kill it. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Paul, for everything you've done. You're always that calm fellow sitting in a pool of turmoil, I guess would be the simplest way to put it. There's always so many things going on all at the same time, none in the right direction. Everything just always mass hysteria, I guess, going on, and you sit there very calm, and you get everybody through that turbulent storm, and we come out the other end, and we're better off for it. I'm sure you're probably as excited and appreciative of the boundary expansion as what the councillors are, because you were the lead person in there, and I don't think in your profession one gets to do that very often in a career. So it was kind of it was a new thing for everybody on council, and we were learning it with you, and you led us through, and we come out the other end again in much better shape than when we entered. So for all of those things, thank you, Paul. It was a pleasure to work with you. I don't know where you're going, but wherever you are, they're very lucky folks, because I think they'll really appreciate having someone of your quality there. So thanks, Paul, for everything.
Thank you very much.
I just want to give you a quick thank you for you came into a department that had lots of vacancies and there's lots of turnover, and you created a tremendous team. You scouted good planners, and a lot of planners came to work for you, came to work for us. I know I tried to commit them all to 5 or 10 years on a regular basis, but you built a heck of a team there, and which is difficult to do when there's so much movement in the planning industry itself. So thank you again, Paul, and the floor will belong to Mayor Davis for last word. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yeah, Paul's idea of retirement is the same idea of mine as retirement, and we have that in common. And Paul, I sincerely wish you the best in the new position you have in another part of Southern Ontario, and I'm sure they're going to benefit greatly. But I want to tell a little bit about, well, first of all, the official plan. I mentioned it last night, Paul, and I meant that. And I appreciate, I mean, the mammoth task of doing a new official plan. It's like you were the conductor of a symphony with a lot of moving parts. And I thought you did a fine job of coordinating it and bringing it to, well, it's not quite the final conclusion. We're not quite across the finish line, but we might as well be there. And, you know, that is going to mean, it's so significant to this community. It's probably one of the milestone accomplishments of this council, because it's the impact is going to go on for decades. But it's also the impact of what you have done will go on for decades here. And Paul, I've enjoyed some of our spirited discussions regarding planning issues. I came into the position as mayor knowing a little bit about planning, and we had some good conversations. But there's something I also want to tell you about Paul, and it's that subject you're not supposed to talk about, Costco. And I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to the day when I can tell the story about Costco, and we're hoping, of course, this year that it's a story with a very fine conclusion. There's been lots of twists and turns in a story that I could tell, but at every twist and every turn, there was someone there from staff who was there hitting away, punching away for the city, knowing that how important it is to many of the residents of the city, and that was Paul Moore. And I'm going to love to be able to tell what it is that Paul did to really move this file along in a really effective manner. You know, I was very impressed. We're not across the finish line on that particular issue. If we get across the finish line, which I'm very optimistic we will, it'll be due in large part to much of what Paul did behind the scenes. And, you know, making decisions that, let's say, they're out of the box. And Paul, of everything you've done, I mean, the official plan tops everything. It's the crowning achievement. But this, what you've done so far in helping this move that issue along, I'm going to love to be able to tell that story. And believe me, I'll be giving full acknowledgement and credit to your efforts. So with that, I truly do wish you the best. And I know where your new position is, and I hope that you're able to accomplish there as much as you've done here. And again, I wish you the best.
Thank you very much, everyone. I wasn't expecting that, but I certainly do appreciate all the kind words. It's been a quick 10 years, and I'm very pleased with everything we've been able to accomplish. And it is a team effort, and I will miss staff, and you do have a great team that is there to help you with moving forward. So thank you again.
Apologize if we embarrassed you, Paul. We just wanted to let the world know how much we think of you. Thank you. Do any members of the committee wish to add any motions to add any increases or decreases to this operating budget? I see none. Joel, will you please provide an overview of step 6E, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we're ending the evening where we began. So the 2021 operating budget remains at $167,862,565. That's a budget impact after assessment growth of 2.62%, an average residential tax impact of 3.2% or $104.83, average multi-residential tax impact of 2.92%, average commercial tax impact of 1.01%, and average industrial tax impact of 2.01%.
Thank you. And I'll see the estimates committee next month, March 1st at 4:30. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Night, everyone.